start out with, we're going to be using green. This is phthalo green, and we're also going to use cad yellow medium. These should be in your kit, and you also want to have some of your white ready. Okay, so I'm going to start out with my green. I just use this straight from the bottle, so you don't need to mix anything. And then I grabbed my flat brush, the biggest one that we had. I'm going to dip it in the water and wipe off the excess water, and then just put it onto my brush. Just a little bit. I don't need big globs of it. And then I'm going to pick a point where you want, and I'm just going to swipe my brush up. I'm going to have more pressure towards the bottom, and then I'm going to lighten up the pressure as I go towards the top. I'm just going to be making some grass at this point. So there's not really a right or wrong. You can do a difference between thick and thin pieces of grass. You just want them very quick and wispy as you go. And if some canvas shows through, it's not a big deal. We're going to leave it as almost a sketchy kind of look. So I'm going to do them of varying heights, but I'm all going to have them go from one center point and out, up and out. Now, as I do this, you'll notice that I've kind of left the center blank. It's not going to stay that way. I am going to be putting in some lines here. So I'm just going to have them go up, and these are just going to be solo long ones that are kind of spread. I'm going to do 3 of them. So those will be stems for 3 separate flowers. Then I'm going to wash off my brush a little bit, and now I'm going to go ahead and mix some colors because I want more than just one green in here. So I'm going to clean off my brush, and I'm going to grab some yellow. Just a little bit, put this separately on your palette. I'm going to go ahead and have that some pulled off to the side here. And then I'm going to grab just a little bit of green, and I'm going to add it to the yellow. You always want to go and add the green to your yellow because it is the darker color. So you want to add dark to the light, because if you try to do light to dark, that green is just going to completely overpower the yellow, and it's going to take a lot more paint to get it the color that you're looking for. And then I'm just going to start going and overlaying some of this new secondary green just with more grass, and I'm going to let it overlap that first layer that I did. It doesn't matter if your grass is wetted or not at this point. They can kind of blend together through it because they're all going to be greens and they're all grass. So I'm just going to go and do that, and you can add as little or as much yellow as you want. I'm going to add a little bit of stuff on the side to kind of ground my painting. So that was that little horizontal line there I did at the bottom of the grass. I'm going to go grab some more paint, and then I'm just going to do some more grass in between where I put those bigger stems too. Once I'm happy with my grass, I'm going to clean off my brush. So you can see cleaning it, wipe off the excess, make it clean, and then I'm going to set this grass aside for a minute to dry. Okay, now we're going to move on to doing the flowers. So I'm grabbing one of my smaller round brushes. I think I picked the tiniest one, but whatever one you're comfortable with. Here I'm using black, but you don't have that in your kit, so if you want, you can use a really dark green and maybe mix a little bit of blue and a tiny bit of red into it, and it will give you a darkish color. And I'm just going to do these little ovally like shapes. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what they are, but they're almost like a little bean shape right on top of those 3 long blades of grass that we did. Those are going to be centers of some flowers. So I'm just going to do those of varying sizes where I want to do them. And so this one, I decided I wanted to do my one flower a little off to the side more so I didn't do it right on top of the end of the green stem. Okay, and then off to the side, you can see my cardstock paper. I did some practice flowers, so you have some cardstock, so if you want to practice these before going to your final painting, feel free to do so. All right, to start, I'm going to have a clean brush, and I'm going to grab some white paint, and then I'm going to put just a tiny bit of red, and I'm going to make myself a pink color. So whatever shade of pink you want to do, you can. And then I'm just going to pick somewhere to put a flower where I think so. I'm just putting it off on my left side, And I'm going to do like these little curved shapes all coming from a same center point. Um, this is going to be a very like impressionist type painting. Um, so don't worry too much about it looking exactly like a flower. All right. Then I'm going to use some more of that paint and then go to the other side. And I'm just going to do another one that's these little dashed lines to create my flower. So I'm not going super technical with these. Next, I'm going to grab a tiny bit more red and add it into my original pink that I mixed, just to make this have a bit of a hint of a few darker lines in there, just to give it a little more depth. And then once I do that, I'm just going to go and grab some white and just do a couple of white lines to highlight it. This is going to make it so it's not just like one flat color. Okay, once you finish up your pink flowers, we're going to want a purple. So we're going to be mixing some red and blue and white all together to get a lilac-y color. So start with your white, add some red and some blue, and that's going to get the color that you want. And you can just kind of play around to get something that you like. There's not a right or wrong answer in this. Test it out on a practice sheet. And then for this part, it's really easy. I'm just going to take my brush and pick a spot, and I'm just going to dab little dots, overlapping each other and all around, just into a little oval-like shape almost that you can see here. And those are just going to be some simple purple flowers that I can do. So put that one there, and I decided, oh, that was too pale, so I added a little more blue and overlapped on top of it to try and give it more depth. So you can try to do multiple purples if you want. You can add a lighter, you can hint of white like I'm doing right here. You can't really see it because my hand's in the way, but I just dabbed some white. And then I'm going to do some more in another spot on my palette. And I can just switch up what color of purple that I want just based on what I mixed. And I'm going to go right over that grass when I do this. On this one, after I get my basic purple in, I'm going to take some white and just put dots along the top, right over that purple, just to give a little bit of a highlight. And then same on the other side. Just going to do that and have it go off. And then clean your brush. Next, I'm going to mix up another shade of purple, which is pretty much the same technique as before. Some white, put some red and some blue into it, and mix it to your heart's content until you get a color that you like. So I'm going for a very light purple here. I'll go and test my color on my practice sheet. Then I'm gonna pick a spot where this is gonna... Okay, so for these flowers, it's hard to see here, but I'm doing something basically like what the sample flower, purple flower at the bottom on my practice sheet to the right is. And those are just little teardrop shapes that all come into one center point. And then I can put like little yellow dots in the middle of them. So they kind of just end up this weird little blob shape. Next I'm going to mix some green and white together, and I'm just going to add some random little greenery. You can see the sample one on the right of what I'm about to do. And you're just going to mix up your green to whatever color you want. You can have it as light or as dark a green as you like. I just went with a light. And I'm going to start from that bottom, going kind of where I see empty lines. And I'm going to do a line up. And then I'm just going to put these little oval droplet shapes on either side of the line that I just created, and then have it end in one. And that turned out really light, so I'm probably going to darken it up here. So just put a little more green on there, and then put a darker line, and just draw over that lighter green that I did, just to get it a color that I like. And that's just to add some grass variety, and it's a very simple one to do because it's line and little blobs on it. And clean my brush. Okay, it's hard to tell, but I'm just going to take a little bit of yellow and put a couple little dots in the center of those purple flowers I just made. All right, I'm gonna grab some of that green mixed with white that I did for the last piece of little grass plant thingy, and I'm gonna decide where to put one of these over on the left. I'm gonna do another line, and you can't really see it very well, but I'm gonna do those little oval-y shapes. And I'm just gonna go on either side and do them. Until I like how they look. Okay, so there we've got a little more variety in our green and our grasses at this point. There's quite a bit of white space, so I'm going to get some green and yellow after I finish doing those leaves, and I'm going to fill in some of my grass a little more. So I'm going to grab some yellow and some green, and then I'm just going to go and put some lines directly from those flowers. So the ones that look like they're going to nowhere, I'm going to give them some stems. And maybe some leaves here. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to do these little leaves. They don't have to be perfect, exact. They just want to fill in kind of that space, and then I'll go and give some more wispy grass into it. Alright, next I'm going to grab some white and some yellow together to make a really pale yellow. And then let's see, where do I want to put these? So I'm just going to decide where it looks blank. So right underneath where I have those purple flowers, I'm just going to do a couple of smatterings of dots all over, like together in little clumps, just to indicate some more flowers in there. Like I said, these are just little dots, but they're going to give the impression of flowers. Nothing super serious here. Clean off my brush. Grab some more yellow and some green. So I get another green that I like. Test it out. And I'm going to add some more wispy grass there. Just to flesh out this little bouquet of flowers here. Okay, next we're going to be doing the main flowers at the top. I do want to say at this point you can do as many or as little flowers and grass as you want in this. You can do whatever colors you can mix up. You don't have to be exactly what I have here. I'm going to do some light yellow and some light blue and a light pink flower. Might be a purple flower for my three main ones. But there's plenty you can do and put in here. It's all your own choice. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in. These are the three flowers we're going to focus on. But first, let's go ahead and mix up our colors. So for mine, I'm going to take some white, take a big glob of it, and make sure it's separated so I don't get it in with anything else. Please note, I know my palette's a mess. All this paint is dry, so it's not going to form. But after I get my white set aside, I'm going to clean up my brush, and I'm going to go and just grab a tiny bit of yellow, not tons of it, and I'm going to mix it into that white so that I just want a very light yellow off-white color. I don't want my paint to be like super sunshiny yellow, but I don't want it to just be white. So I'm just going to add a little bit so it's just like a pale baby soft yellow, and I can test it out on my practice sheet. Find out. Okay, so I'm going to grab some of that yellow on a small round brush. You can pick which flower you want this to be. I'm going to do the one on the left. And I'm going to do an arced shape and take it to a point, and then I'm going to go another one underneath it and thicken it out in the middle, and then go thinner as I get to the end. So it's an oval with some points, and it's kind of curvy. And it might be a little see in this because I'm using such a light color, but hopefully be able to tell. And so I'm going to go to that point, and I'm going to do another one facing downwards. So it's going to be a little bit more towards me. It's going to be the same shape idea, except I'm going to curve out in. So almost like a leaf shape. Next, I'm going to draw a curved line down. You'll be able to see it here in a minute, hopefully, and then back up. Okay, so put that in. Then this last one's going to be interesting because I'm going to go kind of far, go into it. And then instead of going to the point, I'm going to curve up the top and then go down. So this shape's going to be a little different because it's faced away. The petal is facing away from us. And right now, you can stop at 4 if you like, and just leave this is how the flower goes. I'm going to add a little more yellow to my white paint, and then I'm going to put some little dark shadowed spot just underneath there. So now I'm just going to do a couple lines of that darker yellow. It's going to be hard to see because my hand in the way, but I'm just going to do some quick light lines, usually around the edges of my flower petals. As you can see, it's very, very light, but I'm just going to add that, and usually going out from the center too, if you want to put in some dark shadow lines, that will help give it a little bit of depth. Okay, there, so I'm going to go ahead and try and flesh out this flower. There we go. So it's a little bit darker. Just going to do some quick lines from the center just to make it so it's not just one solid colored and has some shadow to it. Okay, so there we have flower 1. Now I'm going to move on to flower number 2. This one we're going to be doing a light blue color, so we're going to go back to our palette. And I'm going to grab a little bit of blue. I've got my blue here, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit of this blue into some white. Through there. So let's go ahead and mix up the color. And I'm not going to do a big dark blue. It's just going to be a light, very pale, baby bluish color that I want. But I don't want it too light because I want it to contrast nicely against that light yellow one that I did. So it's going to be about that. Okay, so we're going to be using a similar, same technique that we did for the yellow one, except we're using blue, and it's going to be a little easier to see. So I'm going to start at the center, and I'm going to go out into this curved shape. And so it's just going to be, we'll go out to a point. There's our first petal. Then I'm going to do the second one, which is going to be headed towards us. So this one's going to be the same kind of idea almost of that first one. But it's going to round at the top a little more because it's facing towards us. And then I'm going to color that in. Okay, petal 2, starting to take shape. All right, petal 3. So for this one, I'm going to start further out, and I'm going to do a curved hook way down, and then it's going to have more of a curve going out. So it looks like it's farther away from us, and we can see the shadow underneath. And then I'm going to do another petal because it looks weird without it. I'm going to do another one right here, and I'm actually going to let it overlap that yellow flower. We're just going to decide that one's in front of the yellow flower I did. And so it's going to have the hook shape go in, thickest in the middle, and then get thinner as it goes closer towards that center dot we did. Then I'm going to do one more, and this one is going to be the one that's like the short because it's facing away. So it's up, and then I'm just going to curve it out at the top. So it's going to be almost like a rounded triangle, a rounded upside down triangle shape. And I'm going to add one more petal because it looks really blank right there. So this one I'm actually going to overlap that first petal I made with another one and just have it curve down a little bit. I'm going to use that same idea. And flesh it out. So right now they all kind of don't look divided, but that's what we're going to use another color for, so we can make this look a little more like it's supposed to. So I would grab some of your blue and add a little more to that light blue that we mixed to make it a darker tone. First we're going to focus on that curved leaf, the shadow, so that we're going to do that darker blue just underneath in a little triangle. And then we're going to go along the line here on the edge of this petal, put the darker blue as almost a shadow. And then I'm going to do a few wispies of the darker from the center. Then I'm going to do this bottom flower. Anywhere where I think a flower is going to, leaf petal is going to overlap with another one, I'm going to go and put in a little bit of that darker blue to give it depth. So we're going to put some right underneath that flower, and then another, and then we'll do a couple more from the center point. I'm just going to very lightly do this. I'm not going to do it with big globs of paint. It's going to be almost like using a slightly dry brush going through and putting those on. Then I'm going to get some white, and I'm going to add some highlights on here. So I'm just going to hit some edges of my flower, and that's just going to make it pop a little more. And then I'm going to go back in with some more dark blue here just to give a little more shading and depth. So really, until you're happy with it, go ahead and mess around with your darks and light shadows in here. All right, next let's get ready for our last flower. I'm going to do a purple color to stick with kind of the color themes that I went with. So for mixing, I'm going to grab some of this red, and I'm going to just put it right into some of that light blue that I had. If I'm done with the blue, it doesn't matter. I can just go and put some red into it. And I'm going to test it out. Like that. I'm going to add a little more blue here. And I'm actually going to go and mix this purple off to the side. So I'm going to go with some red and blue and mix it and see how dark that is. And then I'm going to grab some white, put it off to the side, and then add my purple that I mixed up separately into the white. You can't really see it very well here, but there it is. So I'm just going to play around with this combo until I get a purple that I like. So I ended up with a very subtle light purple, but I'm going to use that same technique we've been using on all of these other ones, where I'm just going to start painting in some petals in this color, and I'm going to, and their shape is going to be determined, are they facing away from me, are they facing in? So this one goes down a little more because they're facing away, it's not as long. And then we'll do one here. So I move it, you can tell I'm moving a little quicker on this one, and that's because we're, like I said, we're just using the same technique as we did on the other flowers. So we're just going to go ahead and get this light color painted in. Now I'm going to add a little bit of my blue into my original color that I used, and possibly a little bit of red to go and give it a darker purple. We're going to go and put in some depth and shading here like we did on the last flower. my slightly darker purple color, I'm going to go ahead and put some paint along the edges of my flower and then coming out from the center, just to define those petals a little more. And I'm just doing very wispy lines out. Once I have the shadows done, I'm going to grab some white paint and put some highlights on this flower. So I'm going to do it on the edges, so at the top of what the flower is, and just a little bit here and there, just to give it a little bit of depth. Okay, now my main flowers are done. I'm just going to start strengthening up and adding some more to this grass, maybe some leaves. So I'm going to get my green, and I'm just going to go over some of my stems here. And then I'm going to add the leaves. I'm just going to go out with these just curvy little shapes to make a leaf shape. I'm not going to be super exact with these, just to give the general impression of leaves. There. And I'm going to have them slightly off even, so I don't want one on one side and the other directly across from it. I like to have them a little bit separated a little more. And just add a few more leaves there. And I'm going to add a couple little flecks of random grass in between to get rid of some of this white space. And then clean off my brush. And I'm going to grab a little bit of white and a little bit of that purple. And I'm just going to put some highlights on that little flower I did earlier. I'm not doing anything super fancy with it, just a little line around the edges, and there we have it. Right, I'm going to take a little bit of red and some blue and some white to try and get a little bit of a darker purpley blue color. And let's see, where do I want to put this? Okay, I'm just going to put another tiny little flower over here. I'm just doing some quick strokes. I'm not doing anything super fancy. It can be just like a little blob. It's more of an indication of a flower than anything very exact. So I'm just going to throw those in there. Clean off my brush. From there, I'm just going to probably take some white and maybe throw in a couple of highlights on a few flowers. I'm not going to do anything too fancy. Like, so I might put a few dots in the middle of these little blue flowers, just to give them a center. And you can't even really notice it too much in this video because I'm not too up close. But pretty much throw in some highlights. I'm going to put a few little strokes of white on those pink flowers I did earlier. Maybe a little bit on that yellow one, and on a couple of these little round leaves I've got going on, and maybe a few here and there. Like you can see, I'm not being super technical about this. I'm just like, we'll throw some there and some elsewhere. Pretty much wherever you want, it's your painting. You can just overload it completely with flowers and do less grass if you want. And for the final touch, I'm just going to grab a darker color. In this case, I have black, which you don't have in your kits with you, but I'm just going to go ahead and put my initials and the year on this, and I'm all set.